When we moved to Thousand Oaks, I was working bees with my dad during the summer, and then I'd do carpenter work in the winter. And you meet going around, you're always working yourself out of a job when you're in construction. Because you go to work, you finish a job, you got to go find another job. And some way I met somebody, and they had volunteer firemen in Ventura County. And they had these air raid sirens on the top of the fire station, and when the firemen would go out, they'd hit the button and the siren would go off, and then the reserve, the volunteers would come in, and they'd man the reserve engine in case there was another call, which it always seemed to come in 2s and 3s when calls come in. So anyway, I got involved in that and went down and did some basic training with the fire department. They gave me bunker gear that you took home and had at night, and then when you'd hear the siren at night or during the day and you're available, you could scoot down to the station and get set up, and as guys come in, you'd get your different positions on the fire engine, because you needed an engineer to drive and run the pump, a captain to direct, and then firemen to drag hose. So I kept doing that for quite a while. And then they were getting paid $525 a month. They had just got a raise in the fire department. And I was making more than that as a carpenter and beekeeper. But I thought, now it's available, maybe. So I put in my papers and went through the process to get hired, and got hired on the fire department. Went through 6 weeks of basic training, and then would pull my night duties at the fire station while we were in basic training. And then after graduation, you were assigned to a station, and I was assigned to Station 34 in Thousand Oaks. It was a very active station. Well, I went through the Navy in 1959. And I joined the fire department in 1969. 1969, because I missed the year before. I got on the list, but they only hired like 2 people off the list. And then the next year, the county was growing and they were really expanding. So the next year, I took the exam again, and they were putting together a basic class, and the chief of the department shows up at my house and asked me, he says, you want to come to work for us? And he drove from Santa Paula all the way to Thousand Oaks, which is about 25, 30 miles, to hand deliver it to me. He says, can you start Mondays? Because at the end of the bee season, I worked the lookout tower for about 6 weeks. There was an opening, and I figured, well, get into the fire department. So he says, I know you got all the uniforms. So that's why, and I ended up in first on the eligibility list. A lot of firefighting is hot, hard, heavy, dirty work. But the thing is, most of your actual firefighting is a very small percentage of what you do, because you're doing cats in a tree, children in sewer drains, car accidents, trees falling down, flooding. It just goes on, because you're involved in the fire service. You're involved in everything. Everything. I mean, and the thing is, when you're going through the basic training, they're just teaching you the basics, because they said, if you don't learn about this stuff and learn how to react to it, it can kill you, because you're dealing with electricity, you're dealing with natural gas leaks. It just goes on and on and on that the fire service gets involved in. And Ventura County had railroads, had the major highway up the coast, Highway 101, We had 3 airports. We had 2 military bases. We had the Pacific Missile Range off the coast. Port Hueneme is where most of the munitions that went to Vietnam went through Port Hueneme. And then we had Point Mugu, which was an air base. And I mean, you had everything. We had fighter jets that would go, run out of fuel and crash, and some of them still had their armament on them because they had a firing range off the coast. We had oil fields. We had Chevron Island, which was a artificial island they built off of the coast in Ventura County, where they went out and they did angle drilling from there. That was an oil producer. And then we had north of Ventura in a canyon back there, we had an oil refinery. And we had wildfires. We had everything in that county you can think of. We even had a laboratory there that had an atomic reactor in it. So you needed to learn all about this stuff and how to react to it and to protect yourself and how to control whatever happened. So it was a real eye-opener to go to work at the fire department and deal with all of this stuff. Oil fracking was done in Ventura County, and that's where they'd take and go down in the oil, the well pipe. They go down and they send a device down that shoots holes into the edge of into the pipe. They pull that up, and then they put a plug in the bottom, and then they start in high pressure, 9,000 pounds of crude oil. They start pumping it back in there, and they force that and beads out into the strata and open the strata up so the oil will flow. And we used to do standbys on that because they needed firemen there in case one of the pipes broke. Well, I was working on one time, and we broke a pipe, and they had Allison aircraft engines running these high pressure pumps. They usually had 4 of them on site. So as soon as the oil sprays up into the exhaust on that, we have fire. And we've got oil coming out at 9,000 pounds pressure before they could get it shut down. And that was one of the most exciting times it was, because we were standing holding 2.5-inch hose lines. And I remember opening it up when the flames started coming up. I opened this up, and here come the workers that were working on the thing, came running through the spray. And afterwards, they came over and they said, "Man, that felt so good running through that spray." And that was one of the most exciting ones I'd ever been on, because it set the brush on fire. We ended up with a brush fire that probably burned 400 or 500 acres, and we had this oil well site. We finally got it all shut down and the fire down on the well site. But that's the kind of stuff you did when the fire. And when you're there standing by for fracking, it's overtime money. And you're in full turnouts. You got breathing apparatus on, and you're hanging onto this hose, and you stand there for 1-2 hours at a time while they're doing it. And it's pretty, you're just soaking wet from sweat. We had several plane wrecks. We had a railroad derailment there that we went on. And then the engine company I work with, we were a hazmat backup. And we're the guys that came in and set up the basins and set up the overhead sprays. The guys that went into the exclusion zone, when they came out, they were in proximity suits, so you'd wash them down and scrub them, spray them with soap, and wash them down into these tubs, which they had sent to recycling plants. And and then help them get out of these proximity suits, which they're a big plastic suit that fits over the whole body with a breathing apparatus inside it.